I used to be addicted to caffeine. I was a completely different person when I didn't have it, and it worsened my anxiety. But I honestly thought I couldn't live without it. But that was then, and this is now. Recently, I decided to cut back on my caffeine pretty drastically, and the results have been amazing. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you why I decided to stop drinking so much freaking coffee, how exactly I went about cutting back on the caffeine, and how I did it without having any withdrawal symptoms. And at the end, I'm gonna share my now go-to caffeine tea recommendation. And guys, I'm not a tea kind of gal, so if I'm saying it's good, you know it's a good one. So first, let's go over how I knew that it was time to cut back on my caffeine. So my caffeine addiction really started during my disordered eating days, which I talk a lot about here on this channel. I mean, it's now my career to help others break free from diet culture and live a life free from food rules. But caffeine, like coffee, soda, and energy drinks, are really a common appetite suppressant in the dieting food rule world. But the evidence behind this is really limited at best. One study found that after drinking a small amount of caffeine, participants consumed about 10% less at a breakfast buffet that was provided by the researchers. But this effect did not persist throughout the day, and it had no impact on the participants' perception of their appetites. So essentially, the conclusion was that caffeine is not an effective appetite suppressant and weight loss aid like a lot of people make it out to be. Now, what many people use caffeinated beverages, how they use it to suppress their appetite, is to experience fullness in the stomach. And the idea is that if you fill your stomach up, your hunger will just go away. But the thing is, our bodies are much smarter than that. And they're eventually gonna figure out the difference between true getting the nutrients that we need and what I call this faux fullness, where we're just kind of filling our tummies with volume. Okay, so that is really the case with coffee or fizzy beverages like sodas a lot of the time. Now, sometimes this idea of volumetrics, which I have a whole video on that I can link for you, could be like having a giant salad with very little calories to actually provide your body energy, right? Lots of volume, little actual energy. Studies have shown that the volume that's consumed by food had a small and short effect on satiety. So meaning maybe you will feel full immediately after your giant iceberg lettuce salad, but your body's gonna quickly realize that it's that faux fullness and that the hunger is gonna come in hot. Like I said, our bodies are way smarter than that, and they will know when they need more energy. If you don't get enough at one meal because you filled your tummy with coffee, you're likely gonna make up for that energy that you need at the next meal. And sometimes that might look eating past a comfortable fullness point to get that energy. You know, when you head into a meal and you're so hungry and then you wind up overeating, yeah, that faux fullness is kind of what we're setting ourselves up for. Like I said, our bodies can and do regulate our energy intake if we listen. Another reason why people can get hooked on coffee is that they believe it is tied to increasing metabolism, meaning your body will burn more calories on its own. Now, the caffeine itself may make you feel like you have more energy, and maybe that will give you some more desire to move your body. Coffee could be used as kind of like a pre-workout addition for an energy boost, but the effects on the actual metabolism and weight are not significant. And while you might think, cool, more caffeine, I have more energy to move, I'm gonna burn more calories, it's not always more is better. You will likely get so much that you're gonna get anxious and jittery and then just kind of feel paralyzed and not want to move. Totally been there. Moral of the whole story here is don't try to use caffeine to burn more calories or to curb your appetite. So those disordered and inaccurate reasons for using caffeine as an appetite suppressant is what got me hooked on it in the first place years and years ago. And while I've improved my relationship with food and body and no longer use caffeine to suppress my appetite, I was still hooked on it. So recently I had to take a hard look at my intake of caffeine, and I decided it was just not serving me anymore. And here's why. So firstly, I was a totally different person when I didn't have caffeine. I was so cranky. and I didn't like that my mood was so dictated on a freaking beverage. If my husband forgot to set the coffee maker at night and it wasn't ready in the next morning, it was like World War III. Okay, I'm totally kidding, but it wasn't pretty, okay? And I wasn't a nice person. I didn't like that. Number 2 is I really felt like I was making my anxiety worse. I've struggled with anxiety for most of my life, and I've noticed a correlation of my jittery feelings and anxiety throughout the day as I drink more coffee and caffeine. So wanting to reduce my feelings of anxiety, I decided to look at my caffeine intake. And then really the third reason that caused me to do this is I know I feel better when I drink more water versus coffee or soda. And well, I want to feel better and feel more hydrated. A little side note on that last one, rehydration status. Coffee isn't necessarily as dehydrating like we've been told. It might not be as hydrating as other beverages, but it's not like you're necessarily going to lose more water than you take in from it. Coffee actually does still count as water intake. So those are the reasons why I was motivated to cut back on caffeine and to stop drinking so much coffee. So here's how I did that. I knew that I was not going to be able to just cut it out and go cold turkey. I was drinking about 32 ounces a morning, and based on my reaction from when the coffee maker wasn't set the night before, I knew that if I just stopped drinking, my life would be miserable, and as well as those who are around me were gonna be miserable. So what I did was I reduced my intake in the morning by just about like 4 ounces a week. This was super helpful, you guys. I would still allow myself a cup of coffee in the afternoon if I needed it, and then once I got down to about 16 ounces, which felt good to me in the morning, I worked on that afternoon cup of coffee, and I would switch that to tea that had a lower caffeine content than coffee, and then I switched to caffeine-free tea. Now, this is a really similar process that I teach to breaking food rules and no longer seeing food as good or bad in the society. It's all about baby steps. Same thing here. It's the most sustainable, non-overwhelming way for people to go about this stuff. Now, during this whole process, if I noticed that I wanted more coffee, I asked myself, why? And a lot of the times I noticed it wasn't as much for energy as it was for wanting the feeling of like warm comfort. Or there was definitely some times where it might have been because I was tired and because I slept poorly or I wasn't going to bed early enough. But what really helped was asking that question so I could work on the root cause of it. So right now I'm sitting pretty at about 16 ounces of coffee a day. Sometimes like this morning it was closer to 12, and I'm feeling pretty good. Now, would I love to reduce my intake further? Honestly, yeah. And I still feel like I'm pretty dependent on it. Like I need it in the morning. For example, if I were to go to a hotel and I would need there to be coffee ready first thing in the morning. I've gotten better about this. I've been consciously trying to let Theo, my dog, to go outside before rushing to the coffee pot. It's helped a little bit, but I still don't love being so dependent on it in the mornings. I don't love that dependency. I'll keep you posted on any further caffeine adjustments that I make, but honestly, I was also kind of sick of focusing on it. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of a break. It doesn't have to be solved overnight, right? I'll come back to it. I've made progress and I'm happy with that. Get rid of that all or nothing thinking, guys. I know a lot of the videos that you see out there on cutting back on caffeine are all about quitting, but I honestly don't know that I will ever stop drinking coffee. I enjoy it. The taste in the morning, the routine of it. I love that. And I think that's okay. So before we dive into my favorite tea, I do want to address the question of, well, isn't limiting to 16 ounces of coffee a day a food rule, or rather a beverage rule? And my answer is no, and here's why. This is my preference. Would I feel guilty if I had more? No. But do I feel better when I have 16 ounces? Yeah. So it's rather an empowered choice. I have full permission to have more than 16 ounces. I just really don't want to because I know that doesn't make me feel good. There's a difference between a food rule and a food preference, or a beverage rule and a beverage preference in this case. Okay, now onto the tea. You guys, I mentioned sometimes I just want a warm, comforting beverage, and literally just the heat in my hands. So good. So if that's the case, then what happens is I have some of this sugar cookie sleigh ride tea. You guys, it is so good. I am not a tea kind of gal, but this stuff, it doesn't even really taste like what you would think tea tastes like. It's like the perfect milky, lightly sweet goodness, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So if you want an extra creamy punch, sometimes I'll add a little vanilla creamer to it. Oh, it's so good, you guys. I'll put a link for this in the description for you. The runner up to this is the candy cane lane one. I really like that tea, but the sugar cookie sleigh ride one is a little bit more creamy and a little bit more sweet. Now, these are both limited edition ones, but usually you can find them on Amazon, so I'll look for a link for you guys and I'll put it in the description. I really think this whole caffeine intake reduction journey that I've been on is, like I said, very similar to breaking food rules. And it really all stemmed from listening to my body. And I know this can be so confusing, listening to your body, so I did make a totally free ebook for you guys that explains how to listen to your body, because it's not just going off of our gut reactions. Our brains are a part of our bodies too, and the ebook will show you, really teach you how to learn how to incorporate the brain part of things. Okay, like I said, it's free. I'll link it in the description for you guys. Super helpful. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you and it gave you some things to think about, maybe with your own caffeine intake. And if you are looking to cut back on caffeine, maybe it just gives you a little bit of guidance on how to do that while staying sane at the same time. I'm all about helping you find your own unique eating and drinking style without food rules so that you can feel better in your body, both physically and mentally. If you are not already and you want to learn more info on how to do this, be sure to subscribe to this channel here. Hit the little bell to be notified whenever a new video is uploaded, which is every Thursday. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video next Thursday, which is actually going to be a full day of drinking. I do a lot of full days of eating here on my channel, but next week we're going to do something a little different, a full day of drinking, which will, yes, include my coffee, which we talked about today. But it's also going to include like things like water and any other beverages. And guys, I hate plain water. So if you're thinking this is gonna be a boring video, then think again. I'm gonna show you how to jazz it up and stay hydrated. So get excited and I will see you in that video.